never rests.
Counting careless in the sky. What a thrilling time to be alive.
What's up, everybody? It is a show. It's about Georgia. It's called The Georgia Show, and we are with you live here on this Sunday night after the bye week. It's game week. We consider it game week. And Georgia, Florida, the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. I refuse to call it anything else. That's just what it is. And listen, we got a lot to talk about. Before we get into any of it, let's talk about our partners over at gametime.co. That's gametime.co. Game Time, listen, download the app while I'm talking right now. It's the best time to do it. This place specializes in last-minute ticket deals. You can get last-minute ticket deals for basically, I mean, I don't want to say anything, but you can get ticket deals to concerts, any kind of live event, any kind of festivals are on there. I mean, this place is booming right now. It's one of the fastest-growing apps out there for a reason. It's because they specialize in you being able to get tickets at any point. You want them very last minute? Do it. You want them a month ahead of time? Do it then. Sporting events, both Jake Roos and I have used it. We both have gotten into baseball games with it that way. It works great. And listen, there's a promo code right now. Terms apply here, okay? But gametime.co, promo code DAWGS, D-A-W-G-S. It's right over the top of my noggin right now. It's right there on your screen. Go DAWGS, and you will get $20 off of your first order. Download the app. Mess around in there because it's a lot of fun. And check out gametime.co, also a web browser as well. Rusty, Jake, Georgia, Florida week. A lot going on. Going to be going down to Jacksonville, which is a love-hate relationship. A little easier when I get to fly. Excited about that. Rusty, the game week's finally here. We know a lot about where's Georgia at coming out of this bye week, do you think? What has been the biggest benefit or biggest development, I guess, during this bye week?
I think the biggest thing is kids got to go home, man. And I don't think people realize the schedule and what's required of these young men. A lot of these young men haven't been to their home since the 4th of July and those 3 days they got off then. So a lot of those kids are at, Lad McConkey. I saw he got his jersey retired. Saw a couple kids out in Texas, and going home and those types of things. And you kind of reset yourself. You know what I mean? You kind of reset yourself to get ready for this stretch run in these games. And you know that what's ahead of you. But I think when players got back today for their meetings, they kind of knew it's time to buckle in and it's go time.
Yeah, it's the second half's here, man. And look, I think Georgia had a chance, not only like you said, for the guys to go home this weekend, but to see some interesting games over the course of this weekend. Duke and FSU were in a battle up until Riley Leonard's injury. Obviously, Utah comes out and pulls it off against USC. So, there's a lot of parity right now in college football, and I guarantee you that's not lost. Missouri right now looking strong and coming down the pipe quick for you as well. So the Dogs probably got an eyeful, and I bet when they got back to Athens, they got an earful from the coaching staff as well. But, I think, like you said, just a refresher for these guys, an opportunity to kind of get your mind right, blow some steam off, and then come back with a renewed sense of purpose. And, Jake, you did the article today over at DawgsHQ. Substantial spread in this game going into this weekend has opened at 2 scores, right? And so that's not exactly the most common thing. It's become a little more common in the last couple of years, obviously. But, that's an interesting line for me, especially with Brock Bowers out for this game and Georgia's kind of first tour of duty without him.
It was a little bit more than I expected. 13 points. I think another book had it 14 points. I was thinking maybe 11, 11 and a half. But I don't know, man. I mean, you're looking at, if you're going to look at this from the outside in, you got the number 1 team in the country playing an unranked team. Now, Georgia has, the AP poll, AP and coaches polls come out today. We'll use the AP poll, for example. Tennessee's 21. in the coaches in the AP poll. I'm sorry, they lost to Florida, so I guess Florida's kind of shown it has some metal in that regard. Missouri's 16, Ole Miss is 12. So Georgia does have a nice little stretch there after this game against Florida. But I'm telling you, man, I talk about the bye week, for Georgia's players. One of the things we wrote going into the weekend is I talked to a lot of people last weekend. We've all become accustomed to talking about Tyron Ingram Dawkins and Mike, when Michael Williams was out, Javon Bullard when he was out. Ladd McConkey there for a while. All those known injuries, right? All of those ones that cause guys to miss full games. There was way more than that. Okay, there was Smile Munden, battling his way back from a foot injury. That honestly, Rusty, did we or did we not think that it might be week 4 or week 5 before Smile came back?
Yeah, we thought that was like we kept hearing like he's playing late in August and practicing. We're like, wait a minute, what? We thought it'd be UAB before best case scenario,
right?
With him,
and he didn't miss anything. He played in every single ball game, and I think when you get down to the nitty gritty, they had 7 days last week. Starting on Sunday, they had 7 days. From I guess 8 if you count from last Sunday to today. They've basically had 4.5 to 5 days off of those past 8 days, which is great for the mind. It's great for the body. They'll get back after it. Tomorrow would probably a light practice. And then, Tuesday, Wednesday will be what Tuesday and Wednesday are at Georgia. But when you start talking about all the different guys, Smile Munden included, Jamon Dumas-Johnson, Michael Williams, Warren Brinson, Javon Bullard, Kamari Lassiter, who, don't get alarmed, was in a boot last week because they're still trying to get him back closer to full speed and give his feet and his ankles some rest. Man, that is so massive. And those marginal gains, I think, that you get from the bye week, Rusty, I think those are big things, just some wound licking time. And, Georgia needed it, came at a good time for them.
Man, you get extra treatment because you can get treatment and not have to like stress the next day, am I going to make it or not? You get treatment, then you get to get treatment again. So, listen, everybody needed it. And I think Kirby Smart mentioned about it's never been a bad time for bye weeks, but Georgia, not just Brock Bowers' situation, they desperately, and I mean desperately needed, a week off to kind of a few days off to get these guys done. And I don't know, we're kind of watching the game live here. And it looks like Jalen Carter just ran right through Isaiah Wynn. So that's going to be all over. And Isaiah's down, so you really want him make sure he's okay. But you talk about Jalen Carter and disruption and what he is. Georgia didn't have that right now. And as we talk further into this game, let's talk about, as we get further into the X and O's, I think this Georgia defensive line is going to be key this week. But we can talk about this bye all we want. They needed it, and it's great for everybody. They're going to practice tomorrow. I don't know if it's going to be light. It's not going to be Bloody Tuesday, but they're going to get it. You can bet your butt they're in some conditioning, and I think they did conditioning today, and they'll do it. They'll get some fast-paced stuff getting ready for Tuesday.
I thought it was interesting, Jake. You mentioned where the second half of the schedule looks now. That's a lot different. That's a lot different from where things. I was informed that Georgia had a very easy schedule this season and had nothing to really challenge them along the way. I believe that narrative may have shifted quite a bit.
Yeah. I got entire off season.
Yeah,
I got some. I'm going to hit on that a little bit more later on in dog stocks, but guys, it seems like it does this every year. It really does. It seems like it does it every single year. Like last year, hey, man, if Georgia can get past Oregon, that schedule sets up real nice for them. Then you got to play the number one damn team in the country. Comes into your house. And they handled it. Georgia was 15-0, obviously. 2021 was kind of the same narrative. Get past Clemson, look out. And then, you had some tough ones down the stretch. You had some good teams you had to play and try and beat there. So it seems like November, just the way it sets up for Georgia every single year, it gets tough around that time of year. And listen, that's when we know the most about these teams. And I thought Matthew C. had a pretty good comment there just a second ago when he talked about I fully expect it too. And we could talk about it real fast because we're about a week away from it. The committee's not going to rank Georgia number one. It's just not going to do it. I don't know if it'll rank Michigan number one either. It might be Oklahoma. Oklahoma might have the best win if Oklahoma's undefeated at that point. We found out last year. I mean, Georgia was ranked number 3 when it came out last year, and that was after just as an impressive a win as you possibly could have had over Oregon at that point. But
how about Gus though? Gus took Oklahoma to the wire.
He did. So. Yeah, he did absolutely, and honestly, they had every chance to win that game, but. Georgia goes 4, 5, 6 in that first college football playoff poll. Maybe rankings, maybe it's 3. I don't disagree with Matthew C here. I mean, I know Kirby loves to talk about no outside motivations, intrinsic motivations.
Oh God,
come on,
love that. He'll love that. Please, he's sitting there going, please put them 4. Please put them 5.
Yeah, 11. Yeah, put us as far back as you could possibly get us. Yeah, he's that's the anti-rat poison. You definitely know that, kind of Kirby is wanting that. Just real quick, guys, before we finish Georgia, Florida, and we kind of start talking a little bit recruiting, get the dog stocks and everything like that. Rusty, to start this week, you and I have talked a lot of ball over the years, and one thing I always like to find out from you is you typically have something you kind of keep an eye on or something that's on your mind throughout the whole week regarding a game. What is it for Florida? Just your Monday thought.
I want to see what we hear if Marius Mims is practicing. They said he was moving around last week. So what does that do? What do we hear, if anything, on Xavier Truss? But I think for me, the most important thing, because Florida's pretty salty up front now. Their front four is pretty salty. And, you want to see if Marius Mims comes back, from this and where he's at. I think the number one thing that I'm watching is what and how much can Lawson Lucky impact this offense, and particularly now. Like now, we need you. Oscar Delp is a guy there that he's got some sample size. You've seen him in big games. Other than that fumble at Auburn, he's been pretty efficient for Georgia. Maybe not the best blocker yet, but that comes with it. So I just don't see what Lawson Lucky can do. I was talking to DJ Shockley, former Georgia quarterback, last night, and we were talking about it. And we all remember that buzz off that first scrimmage where he had 3 touchdowns. You know what I mean? And in fact, I think Georgia lost a tight end commit right after that. It was at that scrimmage. Like, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm going to roll in there behind this guy. He had 3 touchdowns in his first scrimmage. So you look at Lawson Lucky, and I know how athletic he is with ball skills. And is he ready? Is he 100% ready to go? They're not necessarily going to line Lawson Lucky up on a defensive end and ask him to maul somebody on a stretch play. But can he give Florida issues in matchups? Because they don't have a sample size really for him. You know what I mean? So Mike Bobo's got a little bit of advantage of knowing what he can do with him, and people won't know how to defend him quite yet. So he's kind of the number one thing. I would say 1A for me is Lawson Lucky, and 1B would be, does Marius Mims practice early this week?
I'm curious too, going into this week, about how Georgia game plans for Ricky Purcell. I think that's a big question. It may be the best receiver they've faced to this point in the season. Graham Mertz, probably not the most talented quarterback they've seen, but this guy is a difference maker in the passing game. And Georgia's been a little bit susceptible there at times. So how do they kind of set this up for that guy? I think that's a big question headed into this week for sure.
Going back to that Lawson Lucky thing, it's almost like, Bobo's kind of got a little bit of an ace in the hole there, or maybe it's a jack. Who knows? It could be a 10, but it feels like a face card a little bit. And he's got one just kind of sitting there waiting. And, it may be a situation where Lawson Lucky only plays 7 or 8 plays, against Florida. Well, odds are those 7 or 8 plays, if they've got him doing anything on those plays to kind of be involved, like really involved in, the pass game or anything, you can bet it's going to be something tailored specifically to what he does well. And I think that's a big time ace in the hole there for Georgia. Rusty, you mentioned Florida's defensive line being salty, being a pretty good defensive line. And listen, it has had those glimpses, but lately they've kind of struggled. Kentucky really got to them. That's an outlier. I don't think Georgia's going to get to them like that. But Kentucky really got to them. Vanderbilt kind of ran the ball against them better than Vanderbilt runs the ball. South Carolina hit some chunk plays, and South Carolina doesn't run the ball very well. I'm interested to see, has Georgia thus far this year, have they sufficiently through 7 games thrown the ball enough, which they have. They're this first pass-heavy Georgia offense since 1994. Have they thrown the ball enough to this point in terms of game plan to set up the run? Because you don't necessarily have to do it within the game. You don't have to come out and throw your first 5 times to set up a run. What they've done thus far this year might be enough to be like, hey, listen, we've got them kind of softened up here. Let's come out and run the ball on them a little bit and see if we can get it going. Because I think if you can do that, if you can get that established early in that game, man, it could be just absolutely nasty. Roos, before we move on to recruiting, let's talk about Bird Dogs.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I can tell you everything you need to know about Bird Dogs. There's nobody on earth who's a better speaker for Bird Dogs than I am. Best shorts in the market. It's not even close. And they're comfortable. They're flexible. They wash out great. I can assure you, as somebody who has spilled a million things on my Bird Dogs over the course of time, beer comes out of them, ketchup and mustard, chili, you name it, Bird Dogs, it'll come out of it. Put a little Dawn dish soap on there, rub that in, spray it with some cold water, you're good to go, man. But you can get over to birddogs.com/DAWGS, use our promo code, and or just go over and do dogs when you check out DAWGS, and you'll get the hydro style flask tumbler right now, which is pretty cool. We've sold out of all the other giveaways to this point because people love the product, man. They love it, and I get why. I tell people all the time, I would talk about Bird Dogs on this show even if they didn't sponsor our show. I'm wearing them right now. I got the camo version on. Not my best look. I'm probably not going to hit I'm probably not going to hit the woods this weekend. But I'm still rocking it. I'm making it look good. I don't think we're going to pull down an 8-pointer this weekend though. birddogs.com/DAWGS. Get over there, check it out. Like I said, they make a great product. I love them.
Rusty, a couple of recruiting developments late this week. One, might be good for Georgia. One, I don't think it's going to be bad for Georgia, but it's, obviously we'll start with the one that's in the comments. Ellis Robinson visits Miami. Yeah. What are you thinking there?
Well, I mean, he went down with his entire team, from my understanding, IMG. They all went like as a group, I think, for that game. And so, you go with your boys, but I know Miami has recruited Ellis Robinson. They had him on official visits this summer. I had a chance to meet Ellis and his family up in Nashville at the On3 Elite NIL series. And one night, kids went to a bowling alley, whatever, but the adults had a little reception, and I'm sitting there, and we're sitting out on a rooftop in Nashville. That didn't suck. And just having some drinks. And I'm talking to Ellis's dad. I'm like, look, what's this thing wide open or what? And he goes, man, Fran Brown, he's that relationship we have with him. He goes, you look at Will Muschamp, you look at Kirby Smart, and those are 3 DB guys. And he goes, where do you think I'm going to send my kid? And I said, well, I'm asking, you know what I mean? So, he sounded pretty solid to me at that time. Then you see Ellis come out, in late June or early July, and say, look, he's shutting everything down. He's solid. And that doesn't mean these kids don't take visits, because it's just part of it. But he went down with some teammates from IMG, and something definitely we will check into and continue to kind of watch, because you never say never in this world, 100%, never. Especially in recruiting now. But it would take something pretty, in my opinion, pretty drastic for Ellis Robinson IV not to end up at Georgia. He just has that tight a relationship. And Fran Brown offered him when he was at Rutgers as a freshman. This kid that played up at Iona Prep up in New York, so before he went to IMG. So you just look at that relationship; it goes a long, long way. And if you're Georgia, kind of like your chances with Fran Brown.
That was the exact point I was going to make, Rusty, is the length of time that these two have known each other, and the trust that's been able to be developed over that course of time is such a key in this one, man. And I mean, look, you got to think Ellis Robinson was committed on signing day this year, right? I mean, it's been a long time at this point. Now, look, Nikar was committed also for a year and a half, 2 years almost, or just over
Yeah.
2 years. I'm sorry. So it's like you said, you never say never with these things. But I think Georgia's track record speaks for itself, especially when you're talking about defensive backs, especially in the last few years. Guys like Tyson Campbell are in the league flourishing. You have a guy like Kamari Lassiter who has maintained his status throughout the course of this year and kind of came in as a guy who people were thinking kind of, maybe late first, fringe early second. It feels like he's still in that range, in my opinion. Once he's out the door, man, Ellis Robinson, if I'm Ellis Robinson, and I'm not even close. I'm not even close.
I hear Ellis Robinson has some camo bird dogs.
But if I am Ellis Robinson, I'm looking at the opportunity. Georgia has brought in a couple stacked DB classes, no question about it. He's got all the upside in the world and all the talent to come in and be an impact maker from the jump, man. He can throw himself into that mix early on in a way that very few guys have the opportunity to do in a room like this. But Ellis Robinson is that kind of talent. He is a special prospect at the quarterback position. If he's betting on himself, and I certainly believe by every conversation that we've had that he is, I think Georgia still makes all the sense in the world for him and to him.
One of the things I want to point out here, and there are some things about NIL I just don't want to talk about because I don't know about, but I will say this. Ellis Robinson has gotten, when you talk about a guy of that magnitude and the number of teams that have recruited him and recruited him heavily and they've known commodity, it's going to be hard to understand a new number there, okay? Numbers have been thrown at this kid for a good little while now. And that's something that, that's just life. That's just how it is for prospects like that. He took visits this summer, Alabama, Miami. I think he visited a couple of other places. He got a lot of best shots. And I'm not saying somebody's not going to circle back and try to, create something else that looks better for him. But ultimately, man, he's kind of been strong to Georgia. And there's obviously a reason why he picked Georgia above all those other schools when I'm sure everybody was coming real hard after him.
And can we let's talk openly about this for a second, okay? Because we don't always address this on this show. Ellis Robinson, I say this on the board a lot. Ellis Robinson ain't coming to Athens just because he thinks the tree that owns itself is neat. Okay, he's like Georgia is competitive in all of these markets too.
He likes the mellow mushroom in Athens the most. I hear
it's what people seem to think that Georgia's not involved in any of this. That's just not true. That's just not a fact, man. Now the numbers, I don't know, right? And I'm not even saying Ellis Robinson's gay. I don't know. I'm saying Georgia is as competitive as anybody in the nation in a lot of these regards, and I firmly believe that. And if I'm wrong, Rusty, Road, please correct me.
They're competitive. Georgia's not going to win a bidding war, and that's by choice.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not in. As far as I know, Alabama is not into the bidding wars. It doesn't look like Ohio State is into the bidding wars. You know what I mean? Those teams are, there's some schools that can sell development along with NIL, and that's kind of the ones that Georgia's had real good success on. You know what I mean? Some of them, at some point, it's put up or shut up, and a lot of those times it's just you're just not in the same ballpark, and that is what it is, and it's philosophy. And I hear people say you should go all in on one guy. Well, what do you think that would do to a locker room? What do you think that would do to a locker room?
My thing is kind of like, okay, well, it's easy to play Monopoly money. It really is. Yeah. And, and listen, we're all just talking about this, but why would you take on that volatility and that kind of, all of that, kind of it. You look at Texas A&M, it hasn't really worked out very well there. They had a lot of guys leave after that.
But we were talking about that before the show started. Yeah. Texas A&M, listen, I'm not saying they're the be-all, end-all. There are teams that are doing this and using this strategy in a very interesting way, and it may shape it differently. Texas A&M, though, is the case study that we have right now if we're doing this. What's it got them? I mean, those kids are super talented. They're going to be high-round draft picks. But at the end of the day, is Texas A&M going to be in the college football playoff this year?
USC.
And you got to make your own decision on it. If you're in a situation where you feel like you need to go buy a few guys, then you go do it and you see how it works out. And then if you're in a situation like Georgia's in, like Alabama's in, where you can kind of lean on it, and maybe you don't get at, 1A and 1B. Maybe you get 1C and your second option, or maybe you only get one of those, top 3 options. You live and die by that. You go supplement via the portal. You maybe take some of that cash that you got in NIL and you try to keep a guy around an extra year to kind of buy you some time. You've got different ways to go about it, and everybody's going to kind of go their own way about it. But ultimately, all of us talking about it end up playing with monopoly money when it all comes, out, and that's just kind of how it is. I think one guy we can talk about that was probably, knowing the law in the state, it was Williams Nwaneri. I mean, I think, obviously that was something when we found out about it with the state of Missouri was going to be an issue, was going to be a issue for teams recruiting against them. You're seeing it with Ryan Wingo and everything going on there as well. Chidera Uzo-Diribe, all right, slides up there to the Kansas City area. I believe that's where that's at, if I'm not mistaken. Pays Nwaneri a visit on Friday. Rusty, to me, at the very least, that says we think it's worth making this trip.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it tells you there's still communication going on, because they don't waste a Friday to like, hey, we're going to go to Missouri. And
of the bye week.
Of the bye week, knock on this dude's door. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we're still here. That tells you a couple of things. Still communication, still interest. And for Chidera to go up there, that kind of tells you that, hey, that at least that one is, the door's not slammed shut. Now, that Missouri NIL deal, from my understanding, I gotta be real careful because I'm trying to relay what I've heard on this. He can sign the grant and aid with Missouri in September, and he can start getting NIL in state from certain whatever businesses and that type of thing he gets the deals from. That doesn't legally bind him to have to sign with Missouri, though. So there's some outs there still. So it's kind of Missouri does have the state of Missouri has an incredible NIL advantage for them, and you see them keeping Luther Burden, and they got some 5 stars committed, and that's kudos to that legislation in that state, because they did something that's unprecedented, and and kind of protected their home team there with players in state. So
I did some research on that thing the other day, and the legislators openly came out and said, we want to keep the best kids in Missouri home.
Yeah.
I mean, they were on record with it.
Yeah.
And so
that's the problem with the state of Georgia, because there's so many transient people that live here. Not everybody's wearing silver britches, you know what I mean? So that wouldn't fly here. It just wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, also too, I mean, to get back to the grant and aid thing, if you've been following recruiting for a while, you understand that it's kind of the reverse NIL. I mean, sorry, it's the reverse LOI. It's the reverse letter of intent. This commits the school to the player, but binds the player in no way to attend that school. There have been multiple times over the years where players
Roquan did.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah.
There have been times over the years where guys will sign grant and aid to more than one school. They'll get more than one school committed to them. I think
Najee Harris did that, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that Najee had signed with grant and aid with Michigan and Alabama and like maybe one other school, and then just showed up at the campus of his choice after the Adidas All-American game that year.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that works. And like I said, I mean, is it going to be tough to get them from Missouri? Absolutely. But folks, they don't hop on planes, take 2-hour flights, and I mean, 30-minute drives out to the suburbs.
What I want to see is, you would imagine if they have any shot there, they want to get him back from Missouri weekend.
Yes.
And say, hey, here's a team here's who you're committed to right here, and we're going to bring you in, and we're going to show you what we're going to do to them. So that to me would be the next phase in that, to say, hey, this has got some legs to it.
And that might be a night game. We'll learn the game time for that one tomorrow.
My guess is they are rooting for that in order. Yeah. That makes it all the easier to get a young man now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's do some dog stocks. And listen, I'll go first because I've kind of been chomping at the bit for this one. It's about that schedule, and it's about the last stretch of Georgia schedule. Stock up on it. But let me tell you something. Everybody's kind of like saying, well, I heard it was weak. I heard Georgia's schedule was weak. Be careful, okay? Because if you don't navigate that last part of that schedule, the naysayers, the ones that said Georgia had an easy schedule, the cakewalk, the Georgia haters, the ones that were there and were talking about how Georgia didn't look very good against a soft schedule, they're going to end up being proven right. So be careful with that. You hadn't played any of those games yet. You haven't had to win. You've won one ranked game against Kentucky. Knocked them clear out. All right. You knocked them clear out of the box. Now you're going to have 3 more. You're not going to knock all 3 of those teams out, I don't think. Some of them have tougher games before. I think Missouri, I can't remember. Missouri plays Tennessee before Georgia plays one of them. I do know that. But be careful with that whole schedule thing because, yeah, stock up on that schedule. It's looking a lot tougher. It's looking a lot more formidable. But if Georgia doesn't navigate it, find a way to go 4-1 down the stretch, it could be in a little bit of trouble. You know, it could be in a little bit of trouble of maybe not getting back to the SEC championship game. And right now you're looking at, obviously, you'd love to go 5-0 and keep that win streak alive. If you can go 4-1, lose the right one, you can play in the SEC championship game and get back to the college football playoff. But be careful kind of trash talking about your tough schedule because you haven't played one of those tough games just yet. And ultimately, those folks with doubts about the program could be proven right.
Fair enough, I say. I'm going to go ahead and jump in with mine, Rusty, if that's cool. I'm going to say, look, I don't mean to pile on anybody here. It's a tough night for Bear Alexander out there in Southern Cal, but that was one of those deals that you heard people talk about a lot in this offseason, and the idea of Georgia not ponying up and not being a part of this. And, you know, what are we doing? How are we matching this? We're losing elite talent. And then you see a guy like that go to a program like that. USC is out of contention, man. This kid ran into some it was some undisciplined issues last night, and you hate to see that. Like you said, the emotion that the kid showed that it really mattered to him. But I will say stock up on something we talked about earlier in this show, which is how Georgia's kind of handling this NIL situation, how they're approaching this, the guys that they're bringing in, and why they're doing it. I said Texas A&M is the test case for this thing, and to this point, how's it gone for them? Not in the way that they had hoped. I can promise you that. So I think that everybody needs to be cautiously optimistic about the way Georgia continues to handle business on that front. Are you losing some talented guys? Perhaps for that reason. I will not argue that with you. But, you know, we had somebody on the board the other day that said Georgia's ice cold on the trail. I can't get with that, man. You just flipped a top 150 prospect from LSU. You are not ice cold. That's not what ice cold programs do. Ice cold would be like Michigan State, for example, right now, 48-0 to your biggest rival, and you got Hitler up on the video board. So things are not going well in East Lansing. Georgia is going to be just fine. Number 1 class still. And like I said, the approach is still working for the time being. I'm not saying that it will always be the thing, but I think Kirby Smart's shown a lot of ability to adapt with the times. Stock up on the way Georgia's approaching this, moving into it. And also, too, remember, I said this the other day, too, Sam Pemba, Damon Wilson, Jordan Hall, 3 December guys. All right, all 3 of those guys came on board, really made that defensive haul for you last year. Can Georgia close it out again? I'm not saying that's the case, but you got to kind of hold your breath until December on these kinds of deals.
Rue says, I'm not saying it's the case. I'm not saying it's the case.
It is what it is.
Yeah, everybody always have an out, man. Always have an out.
Or what it will be, one or the other.
Yeah.
My stock up, and I don't know what's gotten into me, man, but I think it's like 2 out of the last 3 weeks. I went with baseball, which is crazy, but stock up, man. Wes Johnson and his staff at Georgia, because they landed one of the premier high school baseball players in the country this afternoon from Kell High School, a young man named Bryce Clavon, who is the quarterback at Kell. I did his game Friday night. That's the 2nd game I've done of his this year. He played in the Corky Kell after about a week of practice. He left there that night. He flew to Phoenix the next day. played in the Under Armour All-American game, left there, went to San Diego for like a week, tried out for Team USA, made Team USA. Then he went to Taiwan and represented the 18 and under USA baseball team in the World Classic. Got done there, flew back home, was doing school online, got right back into football practice. I think he's 3 weeks back now in football and just tearing it up. But he commits to Georgia today over really Clemson and Texas in this deal. And he was committed to Oklahoma at baseball at one time, and a lot of people think this could be Kyler Murray. He wants to play baseball, but he football is something he loves, so he's doing it in high school. I asked him Friday night. I said, "Hey, you gonna try this thing?" And he said, "I don't know. I mean, it might be an option to try." So it's very hard to do that. And if Georgia can survive the draft with him, Bryce Clavon in the baseball program today got an unbelievable player. I mean, the ball jumps off this kid's bat. He's fast. I don't like to compare him to people, but like, man, he's got some kind of like Bryce Young, Kyler Murray tendencies to him. The way he can throw a football is crazy. So, I don't think Kirby Smart would tell him, "Don't ever come over here." It is hard to do. Let me make that real clear. It is hard to do that because he's such a high-level baseball player, and you got to survive this draft too with him. So, but regardless, Georgia baseball kind of on a roll and got one of the top premier players in America today committed, young man, that if he plays in Athens the spring season and in that baseball place, well, they'll know who Bryce Clavon is really quick.
Wes Johnson's got it rolling, man. He's recruiting really well over there. And man, Palmer's our guy on that. Palmer will be following that for you. Program and note this week, me and Roos will be back with you tomorrow night, Bark After Dark. We're going to have Charles Power on the On3,
Tomorrow night?
Director of Scouting. Yeah, we're going to have Charles on.
Man.
We're gonna ask him why he hates Georgia so much, because that's kind of the stuff we ask on Bark After Dark. He obviously does not hate Georgia at all. But no, we're going to talk about his ranking process, how he got started, worst hotel he's ever stayed at.
Awesome.
If he's ever almost died from eating gas station sushi, we'll cover all our bases. We promise. So we're going to talk to Charles Power tomorrow night. That's tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Monday night at 9 p.m. Come check with us live. We'll be back with you with the second Georgia show this week at 8:30 on Wednesday. To be determined who's going to be on that show. I think I'll be around, but I'm not sure if these other two rapscallions will be. And then we will have a pregame show for you on Saturday morning. Very first thing Saturday morning, there will be a pregame show for you for the Georgia-Florida game.
Y'all better not be late.
I hope I feel okay.
Y'all better not be late. Y'all better not be late.
Okay. Yeah. But we're excited, man. We're excited for this stretch run. We're excited you all are with us. And we will catch up with you guys tomorrow night for Bark After Dark. And if you're not a Bark After Dark person, the Georgia show on Wednesday. Y'all take it easy.